St. Michael's Hospital stood tall in the heart of the city, its glass windows reflecting the morning sunlight like a beacon of hope. People came from miles away to seek treatment here because it was known as one of the best hospitals in the region. The doctors were brilliant, the nurses compassionate, and the equipment state-of-the-art. But even the brightest places have shadows, and St. Michael's was no exception. Behind its polished hallways and shiny floors lay secrets that only those who worked there truly understood. Dr. Richard Stanton was one of the most respected surgeons at the hospital. He had spent over 2 decades perfecting his craft, saving countless lives with his steady hands and sharp mind. Yet, despite his achievements, Dr. Stanton wasn't well liked by everyone. His reputation was a mix of admiration and fear. While some praised his skills, others whispered about his arrogance and cold demeanor. He believed intelligence made him superior to others, often dismissing people he deemed less educated or unworthy. This attitude earned him enemies among both patients and colleagues, though few dared to confront him openly. On this particular morning, Dr. Stanton arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. He liked starting his day before the chaos of emergencies began. As he walked through the corridors, he nodded curtly at the nurses and ignored the janitors mopping the floors. To him, these people were just background noise, necessary but insignificant. His focus was always on the next surgery, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove himself. The emergency room buzzed with activity when he entered. A young nurse approached him hesitantly, holding a clipboard tightly against her chest. "Dr. Stanton," she said softly, "there's a new patient waiting for you in room 3. He says he hurt his arm during exercise." Dr. Stanton raised an eyebrow. "Exercise? Probably another gym enthusiast trying to show off," he muttered under his breath. Without waiting for a response, he strode toward room 3, already forming judgments about the kind of person he would find inside. When he opened the door, his eyes landed on a towering figure sitting uncomfortably on the examination bed. The man was bald, muscular, and dressed casually in a hoodie and sweatpants. His left arm hung limply at his side, wrapped loosely in a makeshift bandage. For a moment, Dr. Stanton froze, not because of the injury, but because of the sheer presence of the man. There was something familiar about him, though he couldn't quite place it. Unaware of the doctor's hesitation, the patient looked up and offered a polite smile. "Good morning, doctor," he said in a deep, calm voice. "I think I might have torn something while lifting weights earlier." Dr. Stanton quickly masked his surprise and slipped into his usual professional mode, but not without a hint of disdain creeping into his tone. "Another weightlifter thinking he's invincible, huh?" he said sarcastically. "What did you do? Try to bench press a car?" The patient chuckled lightly, unfazed by the jab. "Something like that," he replied. "But honestly, accidents happen to anyone, right?" Dr. Stanton didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed the clipboard from the counter and began jotting down notes. "Name?" he asked briskly. "Mark Sinclair," the patient responded. The name rang a faint bell in Dr. Stanton's mind, but he dismissed it almost immediately. Most likely, it was just someone pretending to be important. After all, celebrities didn't randomly show up at random hospitals, or so he assumed. As Dr. Stanton continued his questioning, his tone grew increasingly condescending. "So, Mr. Sinclair, tell me, are you usually this careless, or is today a special occasion?" He smirked, clearly enjoying the power dynamic between them. "People like you always think they're untouchable until reality hits." Mark listened, quietly, his expression neutral. He didn't argue or defend himself, which frustrated Dr. Stanton even more. Deep down, the doctor wanted a reaction, a sign that his words had struck a nerve. But Mark remained composed, answering every question, calmly and respectfully. Meanwhile, outside the room, whispers spread among the staff. One nurse leaned closer to her colleague and whispered, "Did you see that guy in room 3? Looks exactly like Vin Diesel." Her friend giggled nervously. "Maybe he is Vin Diesel. Wouldn't that be crazy?" Their conversation went unnoticed by Dr. Stanton, who was too busy belittling his patient to care about idle gossip. What he failed to realize, however, was that sometimes appearances could be deceiving, and assumptions could lead to consequences far greater than he ever imagined. By the time Dr. Stanton finished examining Mark's arm and ordered an X-ray, he felt satisfied with himself. Another case handled efficiently. Another lesson taught to someone who needed it, or so he thought. Little did he know, this encounter was about to change everything, for him, for the hospital, and for the countless lives intertwined within its walls. Dr. Stanton stepped out of room 3 with a smug expression, feeling triumphant after what he considered a successful consultation. To him, the encounter had been yet another opportunity to assert his authority and remind people of their place, especially those who thought they were above rules or consequences. As he walked down the hallway, he barely noticed the curious glances from the nurses and staff members whispering among themselves. Inside the examination room, Mark remained seated, rubbing his injured arm gently. Despite Dr. Stanton's rude behavior, he didn't feel anger, only disappointment. He had expected professionalism from someone in such a respected position, but instead he encountered arrogance and prejudice. Still, he reminded himself that this was just one bad apple. Not everyone at St. Michael's Hospital could be like Dr. Stanton. Meanwhile, the whispers about Mark continued to spread throughout the hospital. A group of nurses huddled near the nurses' station, peeking into room 3 whenever they thought. No one was looking. "Are you sure that's Vin Diesel?" asked Sarah, a young nurse who had recently joined the team. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "He looks exactly like him." "I'm telling you, it has to be him," replied Lisa, a more experienced nurse. "Didn't you hear? He's filming a movie nearby. Maybe he came here because it's close to the set." The idea seemed too incredible to believe, yet the resemblance was undeniable. Even the way Mark carried himself, calm, confident, and humble, matched the persona of the famous actor. Some staff members even began taking photos discreetly, hoping to capture proof before he left. Others debated whether they should approach him directly, torn between admiration and fear of intruding. Back in the radiology department, Dr. Stanton reviewed the X-rays of Mark's arm. The results confirmed a minor muscle strain, nothing life-threatening but still painful enough to warrant proper care. Satisfied with his diagnosis, Dr. Stanton scribbled instructions for medication and physical therapy onto a prescription pad. He planned to deliver the news personally, eager to wrap up the case and move on to more important patients. When he returned to room 3, however, he found Mark engaged in friendly conversation with 2 nurses. They laughed warmly as Mark recounted a funny story about his workout mishap. For a moment, Dr. Stanton hesitated outside the door, watching the scene unfold. It irritated him to see how easily Mark connected with others, even though he hadn't bothered to treat them with respect earlier. Wasn't this man supposed to be intimidated by his expertise? Why did everyone seem so charmed by him? Clearing his throat loudly, Dr. Stanton entered the room, interrupting their chat. "Mr. Sinclair," he announced, holding up the X-ray films, "your injury isn't severe, but you'll need to take it easy for a while. Follow these instructions carefully." He handed over the prescription slip without making eye contact, his tone clipped and dismissive. Mark accepted the paper graciously, nodding in thanks. "Thank you, doctor," he said politely. "I appreciate your help." But Dr. Stanton wasn't done. Leaning against the counter, he added, "Let this be a lesson for future reference. Don't push your body beyond its limits unless you're prepared to face the consequences. Not everyone can afford to waste medical resources like you can." The comment stung, but Mark chose not to react. Instead, he stood up slowly, careful not to aggravate his injury further. "I'll keep that in mind," he replied evenly. Then, turning to the nurses, he smiled warmly. "Thank you both for your kindness. I hope we cross paths again soon." As Mark walked out of the room, the nurses exchanged uneasy glances. They wanted to defend him against Dr. Stanton's harsh words, but knew better than to challenge the doctor openly. His reputation for being difficult and unapproachable was well known, and crossing him could mean trouble for their careers. Unbeknownst to anyone, Mark's departure marked the beginning of a chain reaction. that would shake the foundations of IA St. Michael's Hospital. After leaving the building, he called his assistant, relaying details of the incident. Though he didn't seek revenge, he believed accountability was important, not just for himself, but for the countless other patients who might suffer similar treatment in the future. Later that afternoon, the hospital administrators received an unexpected visitor. Dressed in a sharp suit, a representative from Mark's management team arrived at the front desk, requesting an urgent meeting with the board of directors. The receptionist, flustered by the sudden demand, quickly relayed the message upstairs. Within minutes, chaos erupted behind closed doors. Executives scrambled to gather in the conference room, unsure of why a high-profile individual would show up unannounced. When the representative introduced himself and explained the purpose of his visit, shockwaves rippled through the room. Mr. Mark Sinclair, also known as Vin Diesel, is a part owner of St. Michael's Hospital, the man stated firmly. He visited today seeking treatment for a minor injury, but unfortunately experienced unacceptable behavior from one of your senior staff members, Dr. Richard Stanton. Gasps filled the room as the executives processed the information. None of them had realized that Mark owned shares in the hospital. Months ago, he had quietly invested in several healthcare ventures as part of his philanthropic efforts, choosing to remain anonymous to avoid special treatment. Now his identity and ownership stake had been revealed under unfortunate circumstances. We expect immediate action to address this matter, the representative continued. Dr. Stanton's conduct not only reflects poorly on the hospital, but also violates our commitment to providing compassionate care to all patients, regardless of background or status. The executives nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. One of them suggested summoning Dr. Stanton immediately for a formal review. Another proposed investigating whether similar incidents had occurred in the past. Whatever steps they took, it was clear that sweeping changes were necessary to restore trust and uphold the hospital's values. While the board deliberated, rumors spread like wildfire among the hospital staff. By evening, nearly everyone knew about Mark's true identity and his connection to the facility. Some felt vindicated, having witnessed Dr. Stanton's rudeness firsthand. Others worried about potential repercussions, knowing how volatile the doctor could be when challenged. For Dr. Stanton, the day ended much like any other. Oblivious to the storm brewing around him, he clocked out and headed home, confident that he had handled the case appropriately. Little did he know, his world was about to turn upside down, and the lessons he would learn would change him forever. The next morning, Dr. Stanton arrived at St. Michael's Hospital with his usual air of confidence. He had no idea that his life was about to change forever. As he entered the lobby, he noticed an unusual quietness among the staff. Nurses avoided eye contact, their expressions tense while administrators hurried past him without a word. Something felt off, but Dr. Stanton dismissed it as paranoia or overwork. After all, he was used to being feared and respected, or so he thought. His first appointment of the day went smoothly enough, though the patient seemed unusually nervous. When he returned to the nurses' station to review charts, one of the senior nurses approached him hesitantly. "Dr. Stanton," she said softly, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. "You've been summoned to the boardroom. Immediately." "Summoned?" Dr. Stanton repeated, raising an eyebrow. The word sounded absurd coming from her lips. "What for?" "I'm not sure," she admitted, fidgeting with the edge of her clipboard. "But it's urgent. They're waiting for you upstairs." Frowning, Dr. Stanton set down the chart he was holding and headed toward the elevator. His mind raced with possibilities. Had there been a complaint? A medical error? Surely nothing serious could have happened. He prided himself on his meticulous work. Still, the unease in the nurse's voice lingered in his thoughts, gnawing at his confidence. When he reached the boardroom, the door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, he could see several executives seated around a large table, their faces grave. Among them sat a familiar figure, Mark Sinclair, dressed casually, yet exuding authority. For a moment, Dr. Stanton froze, confused by the sight. What was he doing here? Before he could process further, the head administrator waved him inside. "Dr. Stanton, please take a seat," she instructed, her tone clipped and formal. Reluctantly, Dr. Stanton obeyed, choosing a chair near the far end of the table. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. He shifted uncomfortably under their scrutiny, suddenly aware of how out of place he felt. "Dr. Stanton," began the administrator, folding her hands neatly on the table. "We've called this meeting to address a serious matter involving your recent interaction with Mr. Mark Sinclair." She gestured toward Mark, who remained calm and composed. "As you may not know, Mr. Sinclair is not only a renowned actor, but also a part owner of this hospital." Dr. Stanton's jaw dropped. "Part owner? How could this be possible?" He stared at Mark, disbelief etched across his face. "You're the owner?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Mark nodded slowly. "That's correct," he replied, his deep voice steady. "I invested in St. Michael's because I believe in its mission to provide quality care to everyone. However, my visit yesterday revealed a troubling side of our operations, one that contradicts those values entirely." Dr. Stanton's cheeks flushed red with embarrassment and anger. "Are you saying this is about me?" he demanded, his arrogance flaring up. "Because if it is, I treated him like any other patient. No special treatment, just standard procedure." "It wasn't standard procedure," interjected another executive sharply. "According to multiple witnesses, your behavior was unprofessional, disrespectful, and discriminatory. You made assumptions based on appearance and subjected Mr. Sinclair to unnecessary humiliation." But I didn't know who he was," Dr. Stanton protested, his voice rising. "If you'd known, would it have made a difference?" Mark interrupted calmly. "Would you have treated me better because of my fame? Or worse, ignored the needs of someone less fortunate than me?" Dr. Stanton opened his mouth to respond, but found himself at a loss for words. The truth hit him, like a punch to the gut. Mark was right. Whether intentional or not, his actions reflected deeply ingrained biases that went beyond this single incident. It wasn't just about Mark. It was about every patient who had ever walked through the hospital doors feeling unwelcome or belittled. The board listened intently as Mark recounted his experience, describing how Dr. Stanton's condescending remarks had made him feel disrespected and dehumanized. Each word painted a damning picture of the doctor's behavior, leaving little room for defense. By the time Mark finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room was heavy with tension. A brief pause, the head administrator addressed Dr. Stanton directly. "We cannot tolerate such conduct within our institution," she declared firmly. "Effective immediately, you will undergo mandatory sensitivity training and face suspension pending further investigation. If similar complaints arise in the future, we will have no choice but to terminate your employment." Dr. Stanton slumped back in his chair, stunned. Suspension? Sensitivity training? These were punishments reserved for junior staff, not senior surgeons like him. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the weight of evidence against him silenced any protests. All he could manage was a weak nod of acknowledgement. Once the meeting adjourned, news of Dr. Stanton's suspension spread quickly throughout the hospital. Staff members whispered excitedly about the turn of events, many relieved that justice had finally been served. Others worried about potential backlash, knowing how volatile Dr. Stanton could be when provoked. Meanwhile, patients expressed gratitude for Mark's intervention, hopeful that it would lead to lasting improvements in the hospital's culture. For Mark, the outcome was bittersweet. While he never sought revenge, he understood the importance of accountability. "This isn't personal," he told the executives after the meeting. "My goal is to remind everyone that kindness matters more than titles or accomplishments. Every patient deserves respect, regardless of who they are." Inspired by his words, the hospital launched a series of initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity and compassion. Workshops were organized to educate staff about unconscious biases, while anonymous feedback systems allowed patients to report mistreatment without fear of retaliation. Slowly but surely, the toxic environment that had once plagued St. Michael's began to fade away. As for Dr. Stanton, the days following his suspension were some of the hardest he had ever faced. Stripped of his authority and forced to confront his flaws, he struggled to come to terms with what had happened. At first, he blamed everyone else: Mark, the board, even the nurses who had reported him. But deep down, he knew the fault lay squarely with him. It wasn't until he attended the first session of sensitivity training that he began to see things differently. The instructor guided participants through exercises designed to challenge preconceived notions and encourage empathy. For the first time in years, Dr. Stanton listened instead of lectured, learned instead of judged. Though the process was painful, it opened his eyes to the harm caused by his arrogance and prejudice. By the end of the program, Dr. Stanton emerged a changed man, or at least, a man trying to change. He apologized publicly to Mark and the hospital staff, vowing to treat every patient with the dignity they deserved. While some remained skeptical of his sincerity, others welcomed the opportunity to rebuild trust. And so, what started as a humiliating encounter evolved into a powerful catalyst for transformation. St. Michael's Hospital became a shining example of how accountability and compassion could coexist, inspiring others to follow suit. As for Mark, he continued visiting the facility whenever he could, ensuring that the lessons learned were never forgotten. The days following Dr. Stanton's suspension were unlike anything St. Michael's Hospital had ever experienced. The news of his misconduct and subsequent punishment spread far beyond the hospital walls. Local newspapers picked up the story, turning it into a headline: "Hollywood star exposes arrogance at prestigious hospital." Journalists interviewed staff members, patients, and even passers-by, eager to uncover every detail of the scandal. For many, the story struck a chord. People shared their own experiences of mistreatment by medical professionals, sparking a nationwide conversation about professionalism and respect in healthcare. Social media lit up with hashtags like "kindness in medicine" and "on every patient matters," amplifying calls for reform across the industry. Some praised Mark for addressing the issue publicly, rather than letting it slide due to his celebrity status. Others criticized the hospital for allowing such behavior to persist unchecked for so long. Inside St. Michael's, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Employees who had once feared speaking out against Dr. Stanton now felt empowered to share their stories. A flood of testimonies poured into the administration office, detailing similar encounters involving rude remarks, dismissive attitudes, and outright discrimination. Nurses spoke of being belittled during surgeries when they dared question his decisions. Patients recounted feeling humiliated or ignored because of their race, socioeconomic status, or lack of education. Each account painted a clearer picture of systemic issues that needed urgent attention. The board of directors took these revelations seriously. They convened emergency meetings to discuss strategies for preventing future incidents. One executive suggested implementing stricter hiring practices to weed out candidates with problematic attitudes. Another proposed creating a diversity and inclusion committee to oversee cultural changes within the hospital. In the end, they decided on a multi-pronged approach: mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, regular performance reviews focused on patient feedback, and zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior. Meanwhile, Dr. Stanton faced a personal reckoning. Suspended from his duties, he spent most of his time alone at home, reflecting on the events that led to his downfall. At first, anger consumed him. He blamed Mark for exposing him, the board for punishing him, and even himself for not recognizing the actor sooner. But as the initial shock wore off, he began to see things differently. During his sensitivity training sessions, Dr. Stanton encountered people from diverse backgrounds: nurses, janitors, social workers, who shared their struggles working in environments where respect was scarce. For the first time, he listened without interrupting, absorbing their pain and frustration. He realized that his arrogance hadn't just hurt individuals. It had contributed to a toxic culture that affected everyone around him. One particularly powerful exercise involved role-playing scenarios where participants swapped roles. Dr. Stanton played the part of a nervous patient, explaining symptoms to an impatient doctor. The experience was eye-opening. He understood firsthand how intimidating and dehumanizing it felt to be dismissed or mocked by someone in authority. When the session ended, he sat quietly, tears welling up in his eyes. It was a rare moment of vulnerability for a man who prided himself on being untouchable. Outside the hospital, Mark continued making waves. During an interview on a popular morning show, he opened up about his experience at St. Michael's. "I didn't go there expecting special treatment," he explained. "I went there as a regular person seeking help. What I found was a reminder that kindness matters more than anything else. We're all human, and we deserve to be treated with dignity." His words resonated deeply with viewers. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, calling him a hero for standing up against injustice. Some even started petitions urging other hospitals to adopt similar reforms. Inspired by the response, Mark partnered with advocacy groups to launch a campaign promoting compassion in healthcare. Together, they organized workshops, distributed educational materials, and encouraged patients to speak up if they encountered mistreatment. Back at St. Michael's, the hospital staff embraced the changes wholeheartedly. Sensitivity training became a cornerstone of employee development, fostering a culture of empathy and understanding. Nurses reported feeling more valued and respected, while doctors learned to collaborate rather than dominate. Even the janitorial staff noticed a difference, as colleagues began acknowledging their contributions instead of ignoring them. Patients also benefited from the shift. Surveys showed a significant increase in satisfaction ratings, with many praising the improved bedside manner of doctors and nurses. One elderly woman wrote a heartfelt letter thanking the hospital for treating her like a person, rather than a number. Another family expressed gratitude for the compassionate care their child received during a difficult surgery. These small victories reminded everyone why they had chosen careers in medicine in the first place, to help others. As weeks turned into months, Dr. Stanton completed his suspension period and returned to work under strict supervision. His colleagues watched closely, waiting to see if the old arrogance would resurface. To their surprise, he seemed genuinely changed. He greeted everyone warmly, asked thoughtful questions during consultations, and actively sought feedback from patients and staff alike. Though trust took time to rebuild, his efforts earned him cautious approval. Even Mark noticed the transformation during one of his follow-up visits. When Dr. Stanton entered the examination room, he apologized sincerely for his past behavior. "Mr. Sinclair," he said, his voice steady but filled with remorse, "I owe you an apology, not just for what happened that day, but for everything I've done wrong over the years. You've taught me a valuable lesson, and I promise to do better moving forward." Mark smiled warmly, extending his hand. "Apology accepted," he replied. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them." By the end of the year, St. Michael's Hospital stood as a beacon of hope and progress. Its commitment to inclusivity and compassion set new standards for healthcare institutions nationwide. And though challenges remained, the spirit of unity and accountability kept everyone striving for excellence. For Dr. Stanton, the journey wasn't easy, but it was worth it. He discovered that true strength lies not in dominance but in humility. For Mark, the experience reinforced his belief in using influence for good. Together, they proved that even the darkest moments can lead to brighter futures, if we're willing to listen, learn, and grow. The months that followed marked a turning point for St. Michael's Hospital. The changes implemented after the scandal weren't just superficial, they were woven into the very fabric of the institution. What started as an embarrassing incident involving Dr. Stanton had evolved into a movement, a collective effort to redefine what it meant to provide compassionate care. Every corner of the hospital seemed brighter, not because of new paint or equipment, but because of the renewed sense of purpose shared by its staff. Dr. Stanton, once infamous for his arrogance, became a symbol of redemption. His colleagues watched, in awe as he embraced the lessons learned during his suspension. Gone was the man who dismissed patients with condescending remarks. In his place stood a humbler, more empathetic doctor who took time to listen and understand. During consultations, he no longer rushed through explanations or assumed he knew best. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions, encouraged patients to share their concerns, and treated them like equals. One day, while examining a young boy with asthma, Dr. Stanton noticed the child's mother hesitating to ask something. "Is there anything else you'd like to discuss?" he prompted gently. The woman looked surprised, but grateful. She explained how her son often struggled to use his inhaler correctly, fearing ridicule if she admitted ignorance. Dr. Stanton smiled reassuringly. "There's no such thing as a silly question," he told her. "We're here to help, not judge." Word of his transformation spread quickly among patients and staff alike. Some remained cautious, wary of trusting him fully, while others welcomed the change openly. A nurse named Sarah, who had previously dreaded working alongside Dr. Stanton, found herself impressed by his newfound patience. "It's like he's a completely different person," she confided to her colleagues during lunch one day. "He actually listens now, and not just to us but to the patients too." Meanwhile, Mark continued playing a pivotal role in shaping the hospital's future. Though busy with film projects, he made regular visits to check on progress and offer guidance. His presence served as both inspiration and accountability, reminding everyone why the reforms mattered so much. During one meeting with the board of directors, he emphasized the importance of sustaining momentum. "Change isn't a one-time event," he said firmly. "It's an ongoing process. We have to keep pushing forward, even when it gets hard." To ensure long-term success, the hospital introduced several innovative programs aimed at fostering inclusivity and empathy. One initiative involved pairing senior doctors with junior staff for mentorship sessions focused on patient-centered care. Another program encouraged employees to attend monthly workshops where they could share challenges and brainstorm solutions together. These efforts created a supportive environment where collaboration thrived, replacing the old hierarchical structure that had bred resentment and division. Patients also played a crucial role in driving the transformation. Inspired by Mark's advocacy campaign, many began speaking up about their experiences, both positive and negative. Their feedback provided valuable insights into areas needing improvement. For instance, a survey revealed that some elderly patients felt overwhelmed by complex medical jargon during consultations. In response, the hospital launched a communication training module specifically designed to simplify language without compromising accuracy. As the hospital flourished under these changes, Dr. Stanton's personal growth became a source of pride for those around him. He often reflected on how close he had come to losing everything: the respect of his peers, his career, and most importantly, his integrity. Each morning as he walked through the hospital corridors, he reminded himself of the lesson he had learned. True greatness lies not in titles or achievements, but in the ability to connect with others genuinely. During one particularly memorable moment, Dr. Stanton encountered a former patient named James, a construction worker who had visited the ER months earlier with a broken leg. At the time, Dr. Stanton had treated him brusquely, dismissing his concerns about recovery time. Now, seeing James walking confidently without crutches, he approached him hesitantly. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his tone warm and sincere. James turned, recognizing the voice instantly. For a brief moment, tension lingered between them. Then, breaking into a grin, James replied, "Much better, thanks to your team. I heard you've changed a lot since then." Dr. Stanton nodded, relief washing over him. "I hope so," he admitted. "If I ever treated you poorly, I'm truly sorry. That's not the kind of doctor or person I want to be." James extended his hand, shaking it firmly. "Apology accepted. Keep doing what you're doing now and you'll make a real difference." Moments like this reinforced Dr. Stanton's commitment to becoming a better version of himself. They reminded him that healing wasn't limited to physical ailments. It extended to emotional wounds as well. By treating people with kindness and respect, he could leave a lasting impact far beyond the operating room. Outside the hospital, Mark's influence reached even greater heights. His partnership with advocacy groups led to the creation of a national platform called Kind Care, dedicated to promoting compassion in healthcare. Through this initiative, hospitals across the country adopted St. Michael's model of inclusivity and accountability. Workshops, seminars, and online resources helped educate thousands of medical professionals about the importance of empathy. Mark also used his celebrity status to amplify the message. In interviews, social media posts, and public appearances, he consistently highlighted stories of resilience and transformation, not just his own, but those of countless individuals inspired by the movement. Fans rallied behind him, organizing fundraisers and awareness campaigns to support the cause. Together, they proved that ordinary people could spark extraordinary change. Back at St. Michael's, the hospital celebrated its first anniversary of reform with a special ceremony. Staff members gathered in the main hall sharing stories of triumph and gratitude. Nurses spoke of feeling valued and respected for the first time. Doctors praised the collaborative spirit that had replaced competition. Patients expressed heartfelt appreciation for the care they received. When it came time for speeches, Mark took the stage to thunderous applause. Standing tall before the crowd, he reflected on the journey they had undertaken together. "This isn't just my victory," he declared passionately. "It belongs to every single one of you, doctors, nurses, janitors, administrators, and patients. You've shown the world that compassion is the heart of medicine. Let's never forget that." Tears filled the eyes of many in the audience, including Dr. Stanton. As he listened to Mark's words, he realized how far he and the hospital had come. From shame and humiliation to hope and renewal, the path had been challenging, yet rewarding. It taught him that mistakes, no matter how grave, could lead to growth if approached with humility and determination. By the end of the evening, a sense of unity permeated the air. Everyone present knew they were part of something bigger than themselves, a legacy of kindness and respect that would endure for generations to come. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they faced them with courage, knowing they had each other's backs. For St. Michael's Hospital, the road to redemption had transformed into a beacon of possibility, a testament to the power of accountability, compassion, and second chances. A year had passed since the incident that shook St. Michael's Hospital to its core. The once shadowed corridors now radiated warmth, not just from sunlight streaming through the windows, but from the smiles of patients and staff alike. What began as a humiliating confrontation between Dr. Richard Stanton and Mark Sinclair, a Hollywood star turned hospital co-owner, had blossomed into a transformative journey for everyone involved. Dr. Stanton stood at the center of this transformation, embodying the idea that people can change if given the chance. Once feared and disliked, he was now respected, not because of his surgical skills alone, but because of the genuine care he showed to every patient. His colleagues no longer whispered about him behind closed doors. Instead, they sought his advice on how to handle difficult cases with empathy. Nurses who once avoided working with him now greeted him warmly, grateful for the collaborative environment he helped foster. One morning, as Dr. Stanton prepared for rounds, he overheard two interns discussing their recent experiences at the Dow Hospital. "I've never felt so supported," one of them said enthusiastically. "Even when I make mistakes, Dr. Stanton doesn't yell or belittle me. He explains what went wrong and helps me learn." The other intern nodded in agreement. "Yeah, it's amazing how much the culture has changed here. Everyone feels valued, whether you're a doctor, nurse, or janitor." Dr. Stanton paused mid-step, struck by the conversation. Hearing his name associated with positivity filled him with pride, but also gratitude. Pride because he had worked hard to earn back trust, and gratitude because the lessons he learned during his suspension had saved him from becoming someone he didn't recognize. He realized then that true leadership wasn't about commanding authority. It was about inspiring others to grow alongside him. Later that day, Mark arrived for a routine checkup, a gesture he made regularly to stay connected with the hospital community. As always, his presence brought energy and optimism wherever he went. Staff members stopped briefly to exchange greetings while patients lit up at the sight of him. Though his schedule kept him busy filming blockbusters around the world, Mark remained deeply committed to St. Michael's mission of compassionate care. During his visit, Mark took time to tour the newly renovated pediatric wing, funded partly by donations inspired by his advocacy campaign. Bright murals adorned the walls depicting cheerful animals and fantastical landscapes. Play areas were stocked with toys, books, and games designed to distract young patients from their illnesses. Even the air smelled fresher, thanks to an upgraded ventilation system installed to improve comfort. "This is incredible," Mark said, turning to the administrator accompanying him. "You've created a space where kids don't feel scared anymore." "That's exactly what we envisioned." The administrator beamed with pride. "It wouldn't have been possible without your support and the momentum you sparked. Every corner of this hospital reflects the values you championed: kindness, inclusivity, and respect." Mark smiled humbly. "This isn't my achievement. It's ours. Together, we proved that even the smallest acts of compassion can ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what we imagine." As news of the pediatric wing spread, media outlets covered the story extensively, showcasing St. Michael's as a model for modern healthcare reform. Journalists interviewed doctors, nurses, and patients, highlighting the tangible improvements in morale and outcomes. One article featured a mother whose child had battled leukemia, praising the hospital for providing not only medical treatment, but emotional support throughout their ordeal. Another profiled a formerly disgruntled employee who credited the reforms with reigniting her passion for nursing. These stories reinforced the message Mark had been advocating all along. Healthcare should heal not just bodies, but hearts and minds. 2. The Kind Care platform he co-founded continued expanding its reach, partnering with hospitals nationwide to implement similar initiatives. Workshops on empathy training became standard practice in medical schools, ensuring future generations of healthcare professionals entered the field equipped with both technical expertise and emotional intelligence. Back at St. Michael's, the IC hospital celebrated another milestone: Dr. Stanton's reinstatement as head of surgery. It wasn't a decision made lightly. The board reviewed months of performance evaluations, patient feedback, and peer assessments before approving his promotion. When the announcement was made, applause erupted throughout the facility. For many, it symbolized hope. That redemption was possible, even after grave mistakes. In accepting the role, Dr. Stanton delivered a heartfelt speech during the ceremony. Standing before a packed auditorium, he reflected on the journey that brought him here. "A year ago, I stood in this same room facing judgment for my actions," he began, his voice steady yet vulnerable. "I deserved every bit of criticism I received because I failed, not just as a doctor but as a human being. But failure taught me something invaluable: humility." He paused, scanning the crowd. "Humility reminded me why I chose this profession in the first place: to help others. Thanks to the unwavering support of my colleagues, the courage of our patients, and the guidance of leaders like Mr. Sinclair, I found my way back. Today, I promise to uphold the values this hospital stands for, treating every person with dignity and respect." When he finished speaking, Mark stepped forward to shake his hand. Their embrace drew cheers from the audience, a powerful reminder that forgiveness and growth could bridge even the widest divides. In the months that followed, Dr. Stanton poured his energy into mentoring younger doctors, emphasizing the importance of compassion alongside clinical excellence. He often shared anecdotes from his own experience, urging them to see patients as individuals rather than cases. His lectures became legendary among residents, blending humor, wisdom, and vulnerability in equal measure. Meanwhile, Mark expanded his efforts globally, collaborating with international organizations to address disparities in healthcare access. From impoverished communities in Africa to remote villages in Asia, his initiatives provided resources, education, and hope to those who needed it most. Though his fame opened doors, it was his authenticity and determination that truly inspired action. At St. Michael's, life flowed smoothly under the new ethos of kindness and accountability. Patients praised the attentive care they received, while employees thrived in an environment that celebrated teamwork and innovation. Visitors frequently remarked on the palpable sense of unity within the hospital, noting how everyone, from surgeons to custodians, worked harmoniously toward a common goal. On the anniversary of the scandal, the hospital hosted a commemorative event titled From Shadows to Light. Attendees gathered in the main hall, where photographs chronicling the past year lined the walls. Images captured moments of triumph, resilience, and connection, testaments to the progress achieved collectively. Mark addressed the crowd during the closing remarks, his words resonating deeply. Change begins with courage, the courage to admit fault, to listen, and to act. None of us are perfect, but together, we can create something extraordinary. Let this be a reminder that no matter where we start, we have the power to shape a better tomorrow. As the evening drew to a close, Dr. Stanton approached Mark privately. "Thank you," he said simply, extending his hand. "For everything." Mark clasped it firmly, smiling. "No, thank you. You reminded us all that second chances are worth fighting for." Their handshake sealed not just a friendship, but a shared commitment to making the world healthier, kinder, and more inclusive, one step at a time. And so, St. Michael's Hospital emerged stronger than ever, a shining example of what happens when accountability meets compassion. Its story served as proof that even the darkest moments can lead to brighter futures, if we dare to listen, learn, and grow.